how the funding formula intersects with the reality of our institutions, because I mean, every institution in the state will say, well, this doesn't represent who we are as a mission. I think that's been the loudest cry, essentially, is that this doesn't really reflect our unique mission. So I think the other thing we need to consider too is how do we do something that's a balance between what the funding formula is looking like right now and what's good for our students, and come to that middle ground.
Well, and I think too, if we do something with our particular tuition schedule and our policies, and it's designed to be consistent with our mission, that gives us some footing to work with the state to try to get some provisions included in the funding formula that would correspond to what we're trying to do and who we're trying to serve. So, and keep in mind that they haven't fully implemented some of those institution-specific provisions, which I think if we're proactive here and get out ahead of it, if we plug some of these things into our tuition and fee schedules, we can then go to them and say, look, we've got these provisions in our tuition. We need the state to consider that and to try to incorporate some of those into our institution-specific measures.
That's correct. For example, going back to the comment about why 12 hours versus 15, you know, if we were to propose an institution-specific measure that says increase the average number of credit hours taken by our students over a period of time, that would be an institutional-specific measure, and this would be one of the strategies towards accomplishing that. So that way, we're not saying, you know, we're going to force our students into this national trend that everybody finish in 5 years, because we understand our student population better to say we can do that. We might say, but given our students, this is a reasonable goal that still moves towards the national average.
Right. It's not. I don't think it's fair to have us get shoehorned into a position where we're trying to move our completion period from, let's say, an average of maybe 7 or 8 years down to 5, whereas another institution is just trying to get from 6.5 to 5. I mean, that's completely, you know, we're not going to make it.
Right.
You know.
So the last thing I wanted to say, Madam President, of course, is that there were other things that we needed to think about with the proposal, specifically because you expressed them as concerns over the past year. And one of them, of course, was what the implications might be on enrollment as it relates to a student, looking at that number, okay? And then looking at other numbers. Well, we've been talking about that for a year and a half. How would we market this? And we've been talking for a year and a half about, well, is the tuition a major deterrent in enrollment, okay? And even though I cannot say it wasn't or it was, we can say some other things pretty definitively, and that is, for the past 2 years, we didn't increase in tuition, okay, for 2 years. So, Regent Martinez, to answer your question, FY13 was the last year we decided to increase tuition and fees, okay? Now, enrollment has come down since then, okay? So it's suggestive that even when you don't increase it, the response isn't everybody will come, okay, or stay. But but again, we saw increases in certain areas, like returning students, meaning students who came, left, and decided to come back, may have realized that I left to somewhere else that was more expensive, and I want to go back to somewhere else that's more expensive. And we saw an increase in out-of-state transfers, meaning that there are students who clearly are going to pay less here than they are either outside the country or outside of New Mexico. Okay, those are where our increases were. So we realized that the correlation between tuition and enrollment doesn't exactly line up. So we understand also that we've been the most affordable institution in New Mexico for the past 2 years also. And the reason why that kind of campaign hasn't overall contributed to our enrollment increase is that for those students outside of the region that recognize our affordability, their major complication or barrier to attending is, where do I live? How do I live there? Okay? And some of the criticism we get for the residence hall is, why do you need the residence hall? All your students are from Rio Arriba County. Was always countered with, the goal is to service the students who are too far outside of Rio Arriba County to come here every day, and for those students outside of the region who might want to take advantage of the affordability by relocating to the region. So to the first point, students as far as Chama and Dulce, who are also in Rio Arriba County but more than 2-hour drive away, can find an institution closer to them that will still allow them to live on campus, like Adams State or Fort Lewis, okay? And they'll go there instead of come here, and that's the feedback we get from those school districts, okay? Whereas a student who may be looking at affordability for a 4-year degree, from Oklahoma, might say, that place in New Mexico looks pretty good. How do I go there, and where do I live? And if they do their research well, they'll realize, well, for just about $5 more a credit hour, I could just go to Las Vegas, New Mexico, and live there. And that seems to be my second best option, okay, in light of the housing predicament that Espanola poses for me. So those are the major issues. So the rate isn't really driven at saying this is going to help boost enrollment, but what we're going to market is the simplicity, and it accomplishes what our students have been saying in so many ways we need to accomplish, which is, why is it so difficult to understand what you charge me? Why is it so difficult to understand what I'm going to pay to enroll at the institution? And what we would market now, of course, is the simplicity, but we would also market this. We would market that all things considered, all tuition and fees considered, it would still be the most affordable institution in New Mexico. And that's not even including the course-specific fees at other institutions, okay? Now, in addition to that, students have expressed an interest to still understand, well, at the end of the day, can you separate the two? And going back to our conversation with the Secretary and the Deputy Secretary of HED a couple of days ago, we shared with them, of course, that this model has implications for the way they calculate the lottery scholarship on an annual basis. And the question we asked them was, what would they foresee being the circumstance by which we reported our tuition to them for calculating the lottery distribution? And they told us they weren't sure about that piece yet. They said, we may say separate it and give us just the tuition, or we may say give us the whole thing, okay? So what we've always committed to doing over the past year and a half in talking about this rate is, we've committed to the board and to the students that we would maintain, okay, a breakdown like we do currently, a financial breakdown of where tuition goes and where each of the single fees goes, so that if one of these days we needed to just increase the fee for athletics or for student senate or for debt service or whatever, we could be able to identify when we needed that increase and to where that increase was applied following its approval. So we would still be able to parcel out every single fee to every single line item that currently exists in our fee structure. So what we're saying there is, we're going to continue to go through the exercise because we're doing it anyway. But to the customer, we're going to relieve them of the burden of having to go to the exercise with us, which is determining where it all goes and how much it's going to cost them in the long run to attend. So we'll maintain the administrative oversight of all of these fees and their distribution.
Well, real quick, I'm sorry, will the student be able to still see that portion going to?
Absolutely. Well, what we've talked about doing on a number of levels is doing a breakdown like we did with, and the comparison I've always used is our property taxes. At the end of the year, when you get your property tax bill, at least in Rio Arriba County, if you flip it over, it'll tell you where every single dollar or what percentage of every dollar you're paying is going to, whether it be the public schools, public works, or whatever, right? Based on the bonding and things like that. We would still be able to show our students where it's going. And the other example we use is the legislative lottery scholarship. Will show you also, based on every single scratch you take, where your dollar goes administratively, scholarship, marketing, blah, 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 blah. So part of the goal of maintaining that distribution is so that if somebody at any point asks us, tell me how much I paid to athletics right now, we could tell them by the dollar amount of your total $110 or whatever you paid, $2.85 goes here. And that way we would show them by detail.